AP critic Bob Thomas called the original film in this franchise entertainment that propels the audience inexorably from one excitement to the next. Rob Vall of Mania.com described its sequel as batshit insane. People Magazine's Ralph Novak said of the third in the series, "In this imperfect world, you're not likely to see many man-made objects come this close to perfection." And when it came to the fourth installment in this vaunted franchise, Esquire's Stephen Garrett noted that it carries its legacy with a sort of "I still got it" bravado that makes you smile at its AARP filmmakers rather than pity them. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we discuss the legacy of Indiana Jones.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be?
It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. It's Ruined Childhoods time.
I hope that everybody has had a week filled with adventures and excitement and whips and snakes.
And
maybe not snakes. Maybe not snakes.
Maybe not whips, maybe not snakes, but maybe metaphorical whips and snakes, whatever they have been. We hope that you have outrun the metaphorical boulder in your life.
Yeah.
That is, well, I have because, I was just telling John here that
That's me.
My grades, and I'm Dan, by the way, if you just, I don't know, randomly, like you thought you downloaded something else and you're listening to this now. So I teach, I'm a high school teacher, and of course, all of our grading systems have moved online, and we have our digital grade books, and the people, the young hip teachers like me do everything digitally, and our district software has been down for the past several days. So my finalized grade deadline has been pushed back, which I had planned on having them done by the original deadline and probably still will, but it just feels, normally it's like 11:50 p.m. when the deadline is midnight, and I'm like putting the last comments in. So pleasure to have in class.
I didn't know that you filed your grades using the same system that they used at the Iowa caucus. Topical humor.
Wow.
It's
yes.
topical. It makes sense when this episode comes out.
Man, imagine if it had been in Indiana and not Iowa. But
if we were only
would have been slightly more appropriate. But Iowa, yeah, man. All right. So we have a win, but the winner, the I guess now we think that as of the recording of this on February 5th, 2020, our projected winner, Mayor Pete Buttigieg of South Bend, Indiana.
That's right.
Is it South Bend or North Bend?
South Bend.
Did I screw it up? It is South Bend.
No.
Okay. So
yeah. There we go.
So interesting. So anyway, but the Iowa caucuses and the Seattle Public School District software are about equally effective this week. And so, it's a matter of, it's just kind of not feeling that, I don't know, that pressure that makes me rush through things, because you have a lot of kids who turn stuff in last minute, and usually they turn it in last minute, and I just kind of, I can't give them the feedback. I don't have time to sit there and give them the feedback that I want to give them. So now I have that time, and I can actually give some substantial feedback.
Well, Dan, while you were fretting about your grading situation over this past week, I have been watching multiple Indiana Jones movies and also working on my passion project, which happens to be the song that was at the end of the last episode. It was a very
wow. Yes.
short-lived passion project, but it was it needed to be done. If you haven't heard it, please go back. It only makes sense if you listen to the entire episode.
Yeah, and man, I really wish that I had been recording myself as I listened to that for the first time after the episode had been online, all day, and finally after work, I got to listen to it, and the look on my face as I was walking home and hearing what I was hearing, and I just don't want to, I'm not going to be any more specific than that. I cannot ruin it, but just as everything came together, I had one of those Chaz Palminteri in front of the bulletin board at the end of Usual Suspects moments, where it was all I was like, okay, well, I know the music I'm hearing, but what else is this? What, I know it's not from the movie, but it's, oh my goodness.
And I know we should stop talking about it because we have to be very vague, but like, I kind of like the way that it does work with everything put together. But while we're on the subject of our Easy Rider episode, let's do our And One More Thing segment and read this email from French Fry Phil that we got.
Yeah, French Fry Phil has got one more thing about Easy Rider.
So French Fry Phil writes, okay, possibly a little long on this email, but according to Movie Maker magazine, via Wikipedia, Easy Rider was filmed in the first half of 1968, roughly between Mardi Gras and the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, with production starting on February 22nd. So, the 9 months later date range would be 11/22/1968 to 3/6/1969, give or take some early and late births. Here's your cast for the Secret Spawn of Fonda sequel. This is, by the way, referring to Dan's idea that there would have been a child born from an on-set romance with Peter Fonda during the filming of Easy Rider. So the cast choices, and wow, French Fry Phil, very thorough with your research. So born on November 5th, 1968 is Sam Rockwell. November 8th, 1968 is Parker Posey. November 10th, 68, Tracy Morgan. That would have been an interesting Peter Fonda love child. November 18th, Owen Wilson. A more believable, if we were going straight for like a Peter Fonda replicant. Clearly, someone else's DNA mixed in. It got Owen Wilson. December 2nd, 68, Lucy Liu. December 3rd, 68, Brendan Fraser, who you don't have to convince us to get Brendan Fraser involved.
My thoughts exactly when I read that.
The next batch is all 1969, so I'll just say January 14th, Jason Bateman. Love that. January 18th, Dave Bautista. Very interesting choice. January 28th, both Patton Oswalt and Mo Rocca. Very interesting. I once worked on a Mo Rocca commercial for BlackBerry. Mo Rocca was in.
And that tells you when that was.
Right, exactly. It was in Central Park,
yeah.
And it was a kind of a man on the street thing with Mo Rocca, because that was his shtick. And then February 11th, Jennifer Aniston, who we had mentioned. So the timing works out.
I like that. I also have to pipe in here with Parker Posey. I'm in favor of that. I'm a big Parker Posey fan, and I can't recall the last time I saw her in something new. And I would love, like, I think that with Parker Posey and with Brendan Fraser, the opportunity of this type of role to give them a spotlight, and this would be like, it could be that type of like indie movie that gives that type of actor whether it's kind of puts them back in the spotlight, reminds you how great they are, or or just, I mean, Jennifer Aniston's, I feel like she's kind of on an upswing.
Yeah, she's kind of always been, putting
You ever see
around.
The Good Girl?
I did see
Is
The
that
Good
what
Girl.
it was called?
Yeah.
The Good Girl? Yeah, man, great. She's so good in that.
Is that the one with Steve
Great movie.
Zahn?
I think it's, no, is it?
No, that's-
The Good, is that, yeah, The Good Girl.
Oh, no, that's
was
the
with
one
it was John
with
C.
Mos
Reilly.
Def? No.
No, it was with John C. Reilly, Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, Jake Gyllenhaal,
She works at like whatever, like the dollar store or the supermarket with Jake Gyllenhaal.
She did a lot of those really like small ones all around the same
Yeah,
time.
I remember. I remember seeing this one, and yeah, it's totally in that like early 2000s indie.
Yeah.
Fox Searchlight indie film.
Yeah.
Not Renaissance, but I guess kind of a little bit. Since mid 90s. Anyway,
So
back to
I'm just gonna quickly finish off
back to Phil's
French Fry
email.
Phil's list. French Fry Phil's just right now being like, Dan, quit interrupting. March 1st is Javier Bardem, who you did mention. March 11th is Terrence Howard. Don't know if I love that one, just because that guy, he peeves me, man.
It's a shame because I love his performance in Hustle and Flow. Absolutely love Hustle and Flow.
Just not a good guy.
Man,
not a good guy.
The stories I've heard. Yeah, I know. Anyway,
and then he
sorry.
suggests,
And by the way,
suggests music by Dave Grohl, who was born January 14th, 1969. And I do think that Dave Grohl could totally pull off something like this.
That is an excellent choice.
Yeah.
Dave Grohl, I think, would have the respect
Yes.
for where that music comes from. That I think Dave Grohl is a spot on choice.
And the director suggestion, born on February 12th, 1969, is Darren Aronofsky, which, sure, be very interesting. I mean,
I would be interested in
when
seeing
it comes
that.
to like super trippy, like really heady metaphorical stuff, these days, that's your guy.
Well, but also think about some of the sequences in Easy Rider. Think about the Mardi Gras sequence, and then think about Requiem for a Dream. Think about Pi.
Right.
Think about the early Aronofsky stuff. I would love to see him. I would really love to see him get back to something like that. So, man, I honestly, I read that email and I was like, I feel like this is great. I felt inadequate.
But you know
I'm like,
what?
man,
French
I gotta
Fry
like.
Phil hits it home with the potential title Father with a question mark.
Which would be appropriate since Aronofsky's last movie was Mother.
That's exactly the point. Mother with an exclamation point.
Okay. Yes.
That was the joke. And French Fry Phil killed it.
Sorry, I just figured that out
Yeah.
now. I was now years old when I figured that out. I'm sorry.
Oh boy, oh boy.
Do
Do your students say things like that?
No.
Oh,
No.
good.
No, their slang sometimes is really, sometimes, I remember a couple of years ago it was slaps. Everything was slaps. That's slaps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that could have been used in a good way, like, hey, everyone, guess what? I canceled the test. Oh, that snaps. And then, oh, by the way, this is in Seattle, not in the Bronx.
Wait, you said that snaps? S-N-A-P-S?
Slaps.
Oh, slaps.
Slaps.
Okay. I thought I heard
Slaps.
an N in there. Okay.
No, slaps. So, yeah, they would say that slaps. Or it would be like, and the test is going to be next week, and it's going to be twice as long. Oh, that slaps. You have to use the tone to infer the meaning. It's like aloha or shalom. It has many meanings.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, slaps.
I had another thought about Easy Rider, something that was on my mind before we recorded last time, but that just didn't come up, is that, of course, we lost Peter Fonda last year, and it's important to recognize his political views and his outspoken political takes. He was under fire for kind of claiming that Barron Trump should have been locked in a cage, with all of the immigration and deportation and the kids in the cages. Like, that was his response to it, which I love that he is still, sticking it to the man.
Yep.
And clearly his sister, Jane Fonda, is, she is very outspoken about political beliefs. But what I wanted to...
When was the last time she was arrested? Wasn't she arrested like Sally Field was arrested?
Well, it's hard to say because we're recording this a few days before this episode comes out, so it might happen again in between the time that we're recording and this episode comes out.
For the most recent, it looks like she was arrested this past December, but had been arrested the month before that. Like if you look up Jane Fonda arrested, the articles, let's see, December 2019, November 2019. Yeah. So yeah, way to go, like Jane Fonda and Sally Field.
Yeah.
Using the fact that they have a voice.
Oh yeah. And they're getting a lot of other people involved too. So I think that it's really great to know that Peter Fonda was still kind of the same person, I guess, politically that he was back in the 60s. Dennis Hopper, on the other hand, was a Republican, and it's hard to say where he would have stood, these days, considering he passed away quite some time ago. But he voted for Obama only because he didn't like Sarah Palin. So I think that's why he didn't vote for McCain. It was mostly because of Sarah Palin and ended up going for Obama. So it's kind of like, it's hard to say where he would stand on political party affiliation these days, but it's interesting to me that he veered in that direction. So anyway, I just wanted to toss that out there because this movie, Easy Rider, was, so big into counterculture and and the idea of what it means to be American. And right. I don't know. So,
to be fair to Easy Rider, and to give a lot of credit to Easy Rider, it was kind of equally critical. It was kind of It was just it wasn't even critical. It just showed this was how these guys saw things, and this was how others saw them. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, Dennis Hopper's career definitely took a lot of different turns, and who's to say what happened in his personal life that would have maybe altered views on one thing or another. But it was a little surprising to me when I saw that he was, I don't know, a vocal member of the Republican Party, but it gave me a little bit of, he hadn't lost his way with the 2008 election. Anyway.
Right.
Moving on, unless you had anything else to talk about with Easy Rider.
I do not.
Do we get into
I'm ready to ride on.
Indiana Jones?
Yes, we do.
Is this the first time that we've done one where it's like an entire universe of like an entire property? Because I know we've done series of movies.
Like we've talked about, right, like Gremlins where there's a 1 and a 2, or like a Weekend at Bernie's.
Right, but we were focusing mostly on,
Yeah, no, we really haven't. We've focused on the fourth parts in franchises, but we did not focus on the fourth part in the Indiana Jones franchise.
That is very true. Probably very much intentionally, as
I believe so. I think this avoided. We knew this day would come.
Yeah. So I'm just going to start off by giving a brief synopsis for anybody who's unfamiliar with just the property of Indiana Jones in general. Just a quick little overview of his situation. Indiana Jones splits his time between teaching archaeology at Marshall University in the United States and traveling the world in search of historical and religious artifacts. The more exciting of the two typically begins with a mission set forth by his colleague Marcus Brody, though we don't learn in the movies how it all necessarily began, and some of the other figures who maybe set him on his other missions. The movies, I believe, all start with him in the middle of a mission, so it's hard to say how those all began. Jones's adventures take him to the world's most dangerous places in search of objects that are heavily guarded by swarm protectors, booby traps, even spirits from the beyond. And also, he's terrified of snakes. And I guess in his life as a professor, he's quite modest and frequently dodges advances of his admiring students. He is quite the Lothario once he's on a mission. Dan, do you have anything that you want to add to just that portion, a general overview of what Indiana Jones is all about as a person?
As a person, as a man, as a series, as a franchise, well, it's important to note that the character and the films, at least the first film, are inspired by the old adventure movies,
right?
The old serial adventures that George Lucas would go see, and Steven Spielberg, and they not together as children, but in their own in their own spaces. Took these films in and then so George Lucas, as Star Wars was about to open in 1977, took a trip to Hawaii. Steven Spielberg joined him there, and as soon as they got news of the opening night estimates for Star Wars, and Lucas figured he could relax, they started talking about ideas, and Spielberg was like, man, I would love to direct a James Bond movie. And Lucas was like, hey, wait a second. I'll do you one better.
Right.
How about like an old school, like adventure serial?
And this is an idea that George Lucas had come up with years prior with a character named Indiana Smith that was actually named after his dog.
His dog and the Nevada Smith was a James Stewart Western.
Oh yeah,
I think. Yeah.
So it's kind of an idea that's been brewing for a while, and then when the two of them got talking, it really developed and took shape. And
I'm sorry, Steve McQueen.
And then that brings us to 1981, and now I'm just going to talk a little bit about Raiders of the Lost Ark. So in the first movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, we meet Indy while he's attempting to recover a golden idol from a heavily protected cave in South America, but his plans are thwarted when his rival, Belloc, along with a team of indigenous peoples, surround him and demand the idol. His escape from the cave famously features the giant aforementioned boulder that comes frighteningly close to squishing him, and that has been parodied in absolutely everything. I caught my child watching Muppet Babies the other day, and sure enough, there it was.
Oh no, it was funny because I thought about that. I showed Chloe I found on YouTube the old Muppet Babies, and showed her that, and I saw that, and I was like, how did these Muppet Babies see Indiana Jones? That would have traumatized them. But
the same way I probably saw it for the first time. Anyway, upon his return to the States, Brody, who I mentioned before, presents him with the opportunity to travel to Egypt to find the Ark of the Covenant, which is believed to hold the original tablets on which the Ten Commandments are etched. Meanwhile, Belloc has been hired by the Nazis to also find the Ark, which makes things especially challenging for Indy. In order to find the burial site of the Ark, Indy must get a hold first of an amulet that not only contains instructions for finding the Ark, but is a tool on which the Ark's discovery relies. This amulet is an artifact that was once discovered by Abner Ravenwood, Indiana's mentor. And in order to get a hold of the amulet, Indiana Jones and the Nazis are all traveling to Nepal. Indiana Jones travels there, and the Nazis kind of follow him. And in Nepal, that's where Abner's daughter, Marion, with whom Indy had a romantic entanglement years before, when she was very considerably young, that's where she owns a bar. And
15.
Yeah. Yes. Not great. Not a good look. Not a good look, Indy.
He's 10 years older than her.
Yeah. So it's not good. It's really not good. So Indy and Marion, along with Indy's accomplice, Sala, eventually uncover the Ark, but Indy's finding is again taken by Belloc. And after Belloc convinces the Nazis to open the Ark so that they can be sure that they are bringing Hitler the actual tablets, they all die horrible deaths, brought on by the spirits that protect the Ark. Luckily, Indy and Marion kept their eyes shut and delivered the Ark to Indy's employers, the U.S. government, who then delivered the crate containing the Ark to a warehouse filled with similar crates, in a perfect ending to an extremely enjoyable movie. Dan, anything to add? There's so much more that happens in this.
Yeah, I really don't think I mean, of course we see we have Alfred Molina,
right?
Pops up
The very
famous
beginning.
throw me the idol, I'll throw you the whip.
Yeah. A very young
So-
Alfred Molina.
A very young Alfred Molina. Gotta also throw in there how, because I know we mentioned Muppet Babies, but I think we cannot go without
UHF.
mentioning UHF.
Yep.
Opening with Weird Al in the Indiana Jones role, and just almost the whole sequence is
Right. Oh,
is parody.
yeah, totally. I mean, watching
Yeah.
Raiders in that first scene where he has like the bag of sand and he's trying to like weigh it to kind of see that it's going to be the same weight as the idol. I expect him to toss the bag to the side and just grab the idol.
Right.
But no, that's what they do in UHF with the Oscar.
That's fantastic that it's an Oscar. Love that. Such a great touch.
So just going back to, well, first of all, we didn't even mention, for anybody who doesn't know, Harrison Ford plays Indiana Jones. You never know who doesn't know these things, but
right.
one of the many roles that really cemented him as like one of the most famous actors. Like between that, Star Wars, Blade Runner, what?
No, I'm just reminded of, and I could be totally wrong on this. Like my memory could just be, this could be incepted into my memory, but I seem to remember that you were fairly young. So for those of you new to the podcast, John and I are brothers.
It's true.
I'm about 5.5 years older. I remember John being at a young age, but old enough to be in school. And I guess you had learned about fjords and that a ford across a river was like the same thing as a fjord. And you insisted that Harrison Ford's name was actually pronounced Harrison Fjord.
That is not true, and I remember this.
No? Okay.
So we come from a town called Cranford. Cranford. I know that you know this. And we went to a class trip to the Cranford Historical Society, where we learned
the Josiah Crane? Oh,
the Josiah Crane
mind.
House,
The other
where we
one.
learned
Yeah,
about the
okay.
town's history. And there was a gentleman dressed up as the town's founder, Josiah Crane. Little did we know that morning that the man playing Josiah Crane was going to be overheated in his wool suit on a very hot day and passed out. That is a true story. And anyway, we learned about...
He wasn't just reenacting like something that happened to Josiah Crane?
So we did learn that the town was named for Josiah Crane, and it was originally known as Crane's Fjord. And I brought that information home, to which our brother Scott dickishly was commenting about how everything that was Ford would be Fjord, and that's where Harrison Fjord came from.
That makes sense.
I'm setting the record straight here.
Okay.
I did not know that there
No.
was believed that I thought that his name was Harrison Fjord.
Well, like I said, I don't know if some things I am very certain that I'm remembering correctly.
You know, Dan, I
Others,
remember a
not
lot
so
about that
much.
class trip. Because it's not every day that an old man dressed as a historical town figure collapses on your classmates.
It's always fun when you can look at something that happened in life and see it as something that you would have seen in an Arrested Development episode.
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. So, yes, Harrison Ford
So,
is
yeah,
Indiana
anyway,
Jones.
yeah.
Karen Allen plays
all right,
Marion
good.
Ravenwood, and she's
Karen
excellent.
Allen.
She's so good. Like,
Yeah, she's great.
yeah, very easy to like character. It starts off with her in a drinking contest with like a Nepal like townie and like totally drinking him, blowing him away in this drinking contest. Like,
Oh,
she
yeah.
doesn't even, she's barely even falling over, and this guy just collapses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She fakes it. She
fakes
fakes
it.
being drunk. That's even better.
Yeah. Yeah, she's just totally badass. I don't know. She's just extremely likable, and you root for her, and she kicks ass, and she doesn't take any shit from Indiana Jones.
No, she decks him.
Oh, yeah. The Indiana Jones movies are filled with big swings, heavy hits. They're almost, and I might have written this in one of my other synopses, but they're like action adventure farces where it's like silly things happen because of the enormity of the action.
Right. Well, it's Indiana Jones so often, will just kind of like fall into something or have this bewildered look on his face and just almost be befuddled in a moment before returning to kicking ass.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch. There's something happening like in every frame of this movie. And yeah, it's one of the best movies for a reason. And now I'd like to fast forward to 1984 for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So this takes place. Oh, what's up?
I have one more thing for Raiders before we move on.
Yeah.
So first of all, another thing, something that I remember from being very young when Raiders of the Lost Ark was popular, had come out on VHS. There were, and I guess people referred to it as Raiders. And I remember other kids saying that, oh, there was a movie that came before it that was just called Raiders.
Yeah.
And that there was like some imaginary prequel, or like that Raiders of the Lost Ark was a sequel to some movie that had already come out. And I mean, I remember looking for it. I remember going to the video store and looking for it. And I gave up at some point, or I guess I figured it out. But
did you hear about this at the Josiah Crane house?
Right before he passed out?
Yeah, right before. Totally assed out.
That was what he was saying. He said, Raiders! I was like, oh, it's just called Raiders?
Yeah.
What?
But
okay.
There is a movie that chronologically comes before Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which takes place, I think, about a year or two before Raiders. And that makes this kind of among the first prequels. As we know, Butch and Sundance, the early days, is the probably first prequel. So this wasn't, too long after. So this film begins with Indy and a Shanghai crime boss named Lao Che attempting to trade the ashes of a Chinese emperor for a crazy big diamond. And Indy foolishly drinks a poisoned cocktail and is sent off into a farcical display of crazy antics to get the antidote, ultimately resulting in Indy and Willie Scott, a famous, maybe not so much famous in America, but famous in Shanghai, American performer who's starring at Lao Che's nightclub, Club Obi-Wan, as well as Indy's potential protege, Short Round. And they're escaping to a plane that is set to take them back home, but it turns out it's owned by Lao Che. And the three of them escape the ultimately crashing plane by jumping out on an inflatable boat and find themselves face to face after they go through mountains and rivers and stuff. They're face to face with an Indian tribal elder who believes Indy was brought there as a result of their prayers to help their community. And essentially, a powerful stone was stolen from their community, along with all of the children, and they are believed to be at a place called Pankot Palace, which used to be involved with rituals of human sacrifice, and it is believed that this is happening again. And Indy, Willie, and Short Round head over to Pancop Palace and are warmly welcomed and treated to a highly offensive and racist dinner, but they are assured that no cult rituals are afoot. And after there's an attempt on Indy's life, the three discover a bug and booby trap filled passageway that takes them to a subterranean layer where there are indeed ritualistic human sacrifices. And it is also discovered that the children are all enslaved to mine for the remaining 2 out of the 5 total Sankara stones. And surely enough, Indy saves the day with the help of Willie and Short Round, and they return the stone and the children back to the village. Obviously skipping over a ton of stuff, but that's the gist. Why are you laughing?
Oh, I'm laughing because so I have recorded the intro to the episode, which John has not heard yet, but I quoted a review from Mania.com that described this movie as batshit insane.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And I so heartily agree. The opening sequence might be my favorite openings. Tough, because Last Crusade's opening sequence is awesome.
Yeah.
But I love the way it's shot. And actually, as I was watching it, I was watching the opening sequence, Anything Goes.
Right.
And I thought to myself, man, Steven Spielberg's West Side Story might be really good. It's something that I've kind of been skeptical about, but I felt like, assuming that he staged that musical number, I loved the way that he shot it. It looked so old school musical. It did not look like it was inside of a Chinese nightclub.
No, I was going to say that. It clearly took some creative liberties that make you kind of expand your imagination a little bit.
Well, they get you ready for surviving, jumping out of a plane and going down rapids on a flotation device.
Right. It is batshit crazy. It's completely insane. It is wildly racist and insensitive in the way that it portrays Indians and people of, Hindus is a big one. So it's problematic for sure. And it is known to be the darkest of all of them. You know, there's a lot of gore. There's a lot of really insensitive stuff that goes on. It was written while George Lucas and Steven Spielberg were going through major breakups and divorces. So they were just in a mean-spirited place. And it shows.
There's literally hearts being ripped out.
Yeah. Very much so.
Hello, metaphor. So Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, as I believe we've discussed on our Gremlins episode, Gremlins, produced by Steven Spielberg, which came out like a couple of weeks after Temple of Doom, along with Temple of Doom. So these two movies were rated PG because there was no PG-13 rating until these movies came along, and parents were like parents were bringing their kids, it's PG.
Right.
And I guess, I don't know, Raiders of the Lost Ark is certainly like people's faces melt off at the end of that. So I might retroactively throw that one a
Nazis'
PG-13.
faces get melted off, Dan. It's different.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. No, very fine people on both sides. Yeah, right. Anyway, so Temple of Doom, and I didn't see Temple of Doom in the theater. I remember when it was in the theater. I don't necessarily know that. I think at that age, and I was like 6.5, it was going to be a bit much. I did, however, have a storybook with a cassette. It was a read along of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So you listen to the cassette and read and be like, turn the page at the sound of the chime.
Yeah.
Ring! And say, Mola Ram reached into his chest. Yes. Yeah, no, I remember the Kalima chants. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I listened to that a lot.
So the Sankara stones, or Shankara stones, depending on who's saying it, like I said, there's allegedly 5 of them. The cult has the Kalima cult has 3 of them, and when they are brought together, so there are these smooth stones that have 3 lines on them, and for that community, it is believed to bring good fortune to them. And when these stones are brought together, the diamonds inside of them glow. And that's when all of the crazy stuff happens in the cult layer. And for anybody who doesn't know, in honor of Dan and our brother Scott, and myself being the third, I have a tattoo of the 3 Shankara stones on my arm for to symbolize my brotherhood with Scott and Dan, and felt like that was an appropriate symbol. And it makes me smile when I see it because it's crazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You've got some crazy art.
I do. I sure do.
Yeah.
So, Dan, do you have anything else to talk about with Temple of Doom before I move on?
No, Temple of Doom, only that I remember loving the arcade game. I think as problematic as it is, it has so many great sequences in it.
Totally.
The mine car.
Oh, yeah.
The whole... The opening number, like I said, with Lao Che. We also have a Dan Aykroyd using a British accent cameo.
It's very strange and brief. But he's the one who essentially organizes the plane that they're to take from Shanghai. And
he's Indiana Jones's travel agent.
Pretty much, which I totally buy for him. That feels right.
Absolutely. Makes sense. But that's it.
So
that's all I have to say about Temple of Doom.
1989. We now skip to the late 30s, but not before a quick jaunt in 1912, when Indy was just a young scout with a thirst for justice. And while on a scout trip with his group, Indy stumbles upon a group of artifact thieves attempting to uncover the Cross of Coronado. And Indy, who believes that it belongs in a museum, takes it from the bandits and is chased along a circus train, where Indy eventually emerges victorious and heads back home, only to be visited by the men he took the cross from in the first place. It should be noted that circus train is where he found his whip, develops his scar, and his fear of snakes. And so he gets the Cross of Coronado taken from him, and the leader of that gang dons a very familiar outfit, and it is not only the inspiration for what Indiana Jones is famous for wearing, but it gives him the actual hat off of his head, which becomes the classic Indiana Jones hat. And that guy just admires Indy's moxie, and he's not wrong. He totally has moxie out the wazoo. So we cut back to 1938, where Indy is again taking the Cross of Coronado from the main guy who he stole from in the first place. He's this guy in his white suit, very Belloc-ish attire, and again claiming that it belongs in a museum. And this is a very exciting moment on a boat in treacherous waters. It's kind of insane. And once he's back home, and he's approached by Marcus Brody, who alerts him to an opportunity to search for the Holy Grail, the chalice used by Jesus in the Last Supper, and also held Jesus' blood during the crucifixion. And Indy questions why his father, who was always obsessed with finding the Grail, wasn't the one in search of it, but it turns out that he was the one looking for it and actually went missing. So Indy travels to Venice, Italy, to pick up where his dad left off with help from his dad's Grail diary that was mysteriously mailed back to Indy days earlier. And he meets Elsa, who is his kind of guide for all of this. And after he ends up shtipping her, he finds his father, only to find out that Elsa is working for the Nazis and has also shtipped his father. So the two Jones boys have quite the adventure, escaping from and then fighting Nazis on Zeppelins, in cars, in tanks, and eventually find the place that holds and protects the Grail. And the man who's working with the Nazis is Walter Donovan. He's the guy who actually brings Indy on in the first place in order to get the Grail diary. So Walter Donovan also gets there and he shoots Indy's dad, claiming that Indy would need to find the Grail, as one who drinks water from it would find eternal life and would also likely heal his father's gunshot wound. So they all go in, and after incorrectly guessing which goblet is the Holy Grail, Donovan ages extremely rapidly and turns into a skeleton in an amazing moment. And he has indeed chosen poorly. So then Indy finds the cup of a carpenter, and it happens to be the correct one. His dad is saved. Hooray. So that is Last Crusade in brief, starring Sean Connery as Henry Jones Sr.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was thinking, I was like, Marcus does not, because Indy gets basically approached by Donovan's goons.
Well,
and dragged into this, and then he tells Marcus.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, he calls Marcus and is like, meet me over at Dad's house.
Yeah, and Marcus is kind of a bumbling idiot in this one, as opposed to Raiders, where he's, I don't know, pretty normal. But he goes along on this one, and he ends up kind of screwing things up.
But also in Raiders, he also really isn't the catalyst because the government comes
he's kind of
to Indy.
Yeah. I don't know. He kind of brokers the deal.
Yeah, he does. So so we've got the three movies. So Temple of Doom is in 1935, Lost Ark is 1936, and now this is 1938. This is,
when does he find time to teach?
I mean, these adventures don't. Assuming that he doesn't have any adventures in between, it seems to be like a weekend thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, how long really is he is he away? I mean, maybe he goes on break. Maybe he schedules his adventures around the school calendar. I would imagine. Because he goes in. It's in the middle of. He just teaches a class.
To jump ahead in our podcast too much, but be fun to see like the substitute teacher, just like being in Dr. Jones's class.
So he didn't leave a lesson plan.
I got called in last minute.
I don't know what,
as usual.
I don't. Yeah, I get called in. I had plans, and next thing you know, Dr. Jones jumped out his office window and
hasn't been seen or heard from.
Has not been. Never mind. No, he's here. And he's the Holy Grail?
Yeah.
You've got the Holy Grail? Oh, Indy. So yeah, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was the first one that I saw in the theater.
Right.
At the Blue Star Shopping Center.
I feel like I saw this in the theater too.
I remember it came out.
I feel like I remember seeing it in the theater.
So if you went, I remember we all went because I remember I went with Dave Larson. Mm-hmm. So it's possible that we all went.
Okay.
I remember it was later in the summer. It wasn't playing around as much.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't end up going. It came out Memorial Day weekend in that year, and Memorial Day weekend 1989, Grandma and Grandpa I went with them up to Boston because Michael, our cousin, was playing in a soccer tournament up there.
Oh.
So I went with them up to Boston. It was a great trip, but I did not stop
at the ground round on your way. Catch any flicks?
Yeah, caught a few minutes of Disorderlies, trying to pop in at the right time. It's like, is Disorderlies on HBO? Let's pop into the ground round for lunch, shall we? You get the popcorn, I'll get a front row seat.
Pay what you weigh, brother.
Oh, yeah. So, no, but it was a great trip. I remember that much. And I remember I was really excited to see Last Crusade when I finally saw it. I had read the novelization. So, but I remember back then I could read the novelization of the movie, go see the movie, and be equally enthralled.
Yeah, I mean, this one was it's so thoroughly enjoyable from the beginning. You know, River Phoenix plays young Indiana Jones, and we've talked about him in
so
past
good.
episodes, but like, man, oh man, could have been so great, you know, to see that career blossom.
I feel like that was kind of the almost the reboot window for the Indiana Jones franchise.
Right. Well,
because you also had the young Indiana Jones TV series.
Yeah, we'll get to that in
also
a few minutes.
around that
But
time. Yeah.
What's also interesting is that this movie starts with a prequel and then flashes into the future, and it kind of does the same thing that like a lot of prequels do now, like just thinking about like Solo, the Star Wars movie, where it's like it explains things that you don't need to have explained to you. So like in Solo, it explains why his name is Solo, and it explains why Lando Calrissian has capes, and like all of these things that don't need to be explained are just explained. So it's like this, it's like it explains why he has a scar on his chin and how he got a whip to be his thing, and developed his fear of snakes, all within the same minute.
All in one day.
All in one
day.
Minute.
Well, and he gets the hat.
And the hat. Yeah, so
hat.
It does that, but it for some reason it feels okay. I don't know if it's because it's embedded into a movie that is doing its own thing.
Yes.
In the future, but it really gives you all of that information that you weren't really asking for.
Well, plus that his name isn't Indiana.
Yeah, how he got his name. That's another thing.
Yeah.
So Last Crusade, it was always for a long time, especially up until 2008, but it was for a while my least favorite of the three.
Really?
Yeah, because I think that Temple of Doom was one that I don't know, I felt more of a connection with it growing up, and I don't know why exactly. But then as I watched them again and again, Raiders clearly became the better movie to me and to mostly everybody. And then Last Crusade, I don't know if I just didn't like Sean Connery so much in it, but then just grew to appreciate him. Your eyes just got really wide. I was a kid, bear with me. But like, I don't know, I started to appreciate it more. It just didn't work for me at the beginning, but then as I grew, it grew with me. So here we are.
I have to say, Last Crusade, for a long time, was a close second to Raiders for me. Raiders, I've gained more of an appreciation for Raiders and seen how, Raiders is really a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And that's Raiders of the Lost Ark.
The prequel,
not Raiders.
Not the movie that came before Raiders.
Right, not the imaginary prequel. So I loved Last Crusade. I loved the script was great. The wit of it. The Sala, like the way that they brought characters back into it, like John Rhys Davies as Sala.
Yeah.
The way that, and I loved the chemistry. I thought the chemistry between Sean Connery and Harrison Ford was fantastic. And some of the moments in that movie are just iconic. I mean, choose wisely. I used that today.
Yeah. Well,
in school, it was on the board. You could sit wherever you want today. Choose wisely. So, still use that today.
Dan, there is a sketch, a comedy sketch video that's been online since videos were, maybe since YouTube started. And it was a group that I'm pretty sure called A Week of Kindness.
Oh, yes.
They did a sketch about that's the last scene of Last Crusade. And it is so funny. I want to put a link to that sketch if I can find it in the episode's description.
I remember that.
It's so good. They're all choosing the different chalices, and somebody picks up a cereal bowl, and he's just like, no, why? The guardian of the Grail is just like, oh, why? And they keep on making the mistake and choosing the same wrong one.
It's not one of the bowls, it's a holy grail!
Oh! Grail! Thought you said bowl.
And then it just cuts to the guy aging all crazy and turning into a skeleton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I have not
That sketch
seen
has
that in
stuck
a
with
long
me.
time.
That's how good it was.
Yeah.
Speaking of things being good, let's talk about something that isn't. 2008, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Shall we?
Oh, I guess we have to.
It's 1957, and Indy has been
This is what you've all been waiting for.
and Indy has been kidnapped by Russians to help them find a treasure within, turns out to be Area 51, a warehouse filled with, wouldn't you know, crates containing all of the USA's most mysterious artifacts. Seems familiar, doesn't it? And he's looking for, they're making him find a mummified body that he was once working on or found. I can't remember the exact details. And remembering that it has magnetic qualities, he uses gunpowder and shotgun shells to find the buried crate, which is actually kind of cool.
If I may interject, just because it's fresh in my mind.
Oh, okay.
I took one for the team here and rewatched Crystal Skull. So he was one of a few select group of archaeologists that was brought in to Roswell.
Oh, got it. Okay.
After the crash, they never told him what he was looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's the whole thing. He's going on about I don't know what it was. We were just asked to look at some stuff. And,
right.
Yeah. So but
so anyway, he's there to find this thing, and then after escaping from the Soviets, ends up in a nuclear test facility because they're in the middle of Nevada, like complete middle of nowhere. And during this nuclear bomb test, he escapes via lead-lined refrigerator, miraculously, and he encounters a. So after all that happens, he goes back and then to Marshall University, and he is met by a greaser named Mutt Williams, who has a letter for Jones from an old colleague named Oxley. And this leads them to Peru, where Oxley has been in a psychiatric facility. And I'm really blasting through this one, so I'm leaving out a lot of specifics. So they find that he's been researching all these things about these crystal skulls, and they go to where his notes say that they are, which is in Peru. Wait, no, that one is somewhere in the Amazon, I think. Anyway, they find one of the crystal skulls that he had written about, and it was in a heavily guarded ancient ruin. And after Jones and Mutt are captured by the Soviets in the Amazon jungle, they are brought to a campsite where they find Oxley and Marion Ravenwood, who happens to be Mutt's father, and big surprise, Indy is the father. And what?
Just to clarify, Marion is Mutt's mother.
Oh, did I say
not
father? I'm just reading this really fast, man. So yeah, Marion is Mutt's mother. Yeah. So then they're all on the hunt for the proper like resting spot of the crystal skull, and their journey takes them on like car crashes, flying through trees with monkeys, avoiding crazy man-eating ants, and over a series of waterfalls that ultimately brings them to their final destination. And then they reunite the skull with this like crazy crystal skeleton, and in this weird underground city that's completely bananas, but not surprising for an Indiana Jones movie. And when they reunite the skull with the skeleton, it forces the entire city to collapse, and then a flying saucer emerges. And I don't know, the day is saved. Then Indy and Marion get married, and there is a cheeseball moment where Mutt almost puts on his hat, but then he doesn't because he sucks. Mutt is played by Shia LaBeouf. Karen Allen is back as Marion. Oh, and the Soviets are led by Kate Blanchett, who is the saving grace of this
The
movie.
one saving grace of this movie.
You know, as historically bad as this movie is, there were some moments that I definitely appreciated, and it was good to see Harrison Ford in his 2008 condition, like really giving it a go and putting himself fully into it. And there's like some really fun moments, like there's this chase sequence that leads Indy and Mutt sliding through the like university library on a motorcycle, and when they land, everyone's like crowding around, and one guy's just like, Dr. Jones, I had a question for you about the, and it's just like, that's a funny moment. There's a really cool moment when they're about to find the crystal skull for the first time, and one of the people protecting it tries to like blow like a blow dart, and Indy pops up and blows it back into the guy's throat. Like there's things like that that just are very authentically Indiana Jones, that makes it feel really fun and not complete garbage. But and then there's also this moment where they're in some sort of tent, and Indiana Jones is like mostly backlit, and you see the shadow, like you see him and he's in the shadow of his head with the hat, and it's a really like well put together scene. So it's like, it's not all bad. Like, yes, there are some laughable things that happen in it, and most of it is completely unnecessary, but having watched all of the movies kind of in rapid succession, it's like there's a lot of things that make it still feel very much like an Indiana Jones movie. So I do appreciate it in that way. And great to see Karen Allen again.
Yeah. So Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I remember so a couple of years ago I was with Scott in New York, and we went to the Tim Burton themed bar. I forget what it's called.
Okay.
It was like Beetle Bar or something like that. And I remember we had a pretty lengthy conversation with the bartender about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Really?
And he was singing its praises, and I wish I could. I remember him making sense somewhat, and I like since then have kind of been like, maybe I should give it another shot. So, and I hadn't until the other night. But so with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, so first of all, I think that the ending sequence really rips off like Raiders and Crusade, because you have this moment where Kate Blanchett, like they put the crystal skull back on the alien body, or they're from another dimension. It's kind of vague the way that it's explained, because Oxley is the only one who knows anything. And then they're like, where are they going? Are they going to space? And he's like, the space between spaces.
Space between
it's
spaces,
like, what the?
yeah.
And then they're like, what's that in the sky? It's a interdimensional portal. So are they not aliens? So that was strange. I had a problem with, so Kate Blanchett is standing there in the middle of all of the aliens, and she's like, I want to know everything. Oh my God, she's so great in this role. And I mean, she's so great in every role, and all the aliens, they combine into one alien, and then they just like stare her in the eye, and then like she just like her face explodes.
Yeah.
And it felt like a combination between like you've chosen poorly and you've looked at the Grail. Yeah. Or you've looked in the Ark. Right. So that bothered me. It bothered me that I always felt, so looking at Indiana Jones and Star Wars as kind of these not connected trilogies, but they're the brainchildren of George Lucas. Excuse me. And thinking of them, I felt like Star Wars was the was about, the mysteries, the mystique of space, and more spirituality.
Right.
With the Force, and that Indiana Jones was about the mystery and spirituality of Earth.
Sure.
Like of our past. It's almost like Star Wars is this otherworldly thing, and Indiana Jones gives us otherworldly, but within our world and within the mythology of people, from the Ark to the Grail to the Sankara stones. And then you've got the Crystal Skull, and it's kind of this weird, and throughout the whole movie, it's like they make it so obvious that it's aliens, but I feel like no one in the movie, even the archaeologists.
You also have to keep in mind that this takes place in 57, 58, where it's like, people weren't talking
57.
about aliens the way that they do. Even like that's when things really got started, was around that time. Like a lot of the lore. I mean, there were people who would talk about it were considered pretty much crazy at the time. Now, having worked, at the Roswell crash site, Indiana Jones might have had a little bit more insight, and I'm sure that his curiosity would have led him to a few conclusions that, but
so
it's hard to say.
I also for some reason there were sequences in the movie. First of all, I just did the script, the dialogue. There's a little I don't like fan service. I think that a movie, especially a movie that's part of a franchise that's known for really strong storytelling, it should just tell its story without the nudge, nudge, wink, wink to get the cheap, I get, at one point in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Indy says, I have a bad feeling about this. And I'm like, is that a Star Wars? That's like a Star Wars shout out.
Well,
and it came across as a little fan servicey. It felt like Harrison Ford in the role, and I no one else can do it. It's him. That's his role. But there was a part of me that I guess missed. There was something about the character that was missing, and I know it's not the youth, because of course you can't expect that.
Right.
And I think it was in the writing. I don't think it was Harrison Ford.
Yeah,
I think the writing was just very, it wasn't as quick-witted.
Right. No, I tried to watch it this time with a more open mind, and this is I've now seen it 3 times. Oof. But I tried to have a more open mind, and as I was watching the other movies, I was realizing there are so many things about the first 3 that take a lot of liberties with, ghosts and spirits. And I mean, even Temple of Doom, of course, you have the cult connection. And there's a lot about these movies that takes you beyond just archaeology. It's more visually spiritual than something like the Star Wars movies. And going into Crystal Skull with that in mind, it's like, well, maybe this isn't as far-fetched given what we've already seen within this world. So I just kind of watched it for really just what it was, and didn't want it to be, I knew it wasn't going to be anything groundbreaking when I watched it this last time. But, it's like in Raiders, when Marion is sees a bunch of skeletons, they all just start screaming at her, and it's like, that's telling us we have to just assume that what we're seeing is not a straightforward telling of a story. It's putting us into a completely different place. When we see the ghosts coming out of the Ark, we know, like, okay, this isn't just an archaeologist trying to recover an artifact. There's way more to it in all of these movies. So this one goes to another dimension, to outer space, whatever. And that's just how it happened. And what are you going to do?
That's kind of what I was wondering, was what would you have rather seen as a fourth Indiana Jones movie?
Ooh. Well, before we go into our own thoughts, I want to give a quick overview of all the things that have been done. So, just real quick, you had mentioned Star Wars and the connection between Indiana Jones and Han Solo. In 2004, there was a Dark Horse Comics story called Into the Great Unknown that was in Star Wars Tales Volume 5. And according to Wikipedia, in this non-canon story, bringing together two of Harrison Ford's best-known roles, Indy and Short Round discover a crash-landed Millennium Falcon in the Pacific Northwest. Hey, that's where we are. Along with Han Solo's skeleton and the realization that a rumored nearby Sasquatch is in fact Chewbacca. So that is a thing that's out there.
Holy cow, that's amazing. I want it.
So this also does mention that Indy appears in a series of Marvel comics. So let your mind go where your mind goes. There, of course, were novelizations. There were some original novels. I'm reading this from Wikipedia. So February 91 to February 99, 12 Indiana Jones themed adult novels. I don't know exactly what it means by adult. Were licensed by Lucasfilm.
It doesn't mean what you think it means.
Got it. And let's see, we've got a bunch of them. So they are Indiana Jones and the Peril at Delphi, Indiana Jones and the Dance of the Giants, Indiana Jones and the Seven Veils, Indiana Jones and the Genesis Deluge, Indiana Jones and the Unicorn's Legacy, Indiana Jones and the Interior World, Indiana Jones and the Sky Pirates, Indiana Jones and the White Witch, Indiana Jones and the Philosopher's Stone. Wasn't that the first Harry Potter?
That was the first Harry Potter,
British
yeah.
Sorcerer's Stone. So that was May of 95. Yeah. Interesting. Indiana Jones and the Dinosaur Eggs, Indiana Jones and the Hollow Earth, Indiana Jones and the Secret of the Sphinx, and Indiana Jones and the Army of the Dead. Written by somebody named Steve Perry, who I don't think was in Journey. And then we have...
Oh, Sherry.
And then, as we mentioned, the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which stars Sean Patrick Flannery as a Powder, as a young Indiana Jones. So that one didn't get... It went from 92 to 96. The ratings weren't good. It was very expensive, so it got canceled. But it was...
Good show.
Was it a good show? I'm sure I saw it.
I remember it being a good show. I mean, who knows how these things age, but I remember at the time when I was like the target audience for that show, I really liked it. So
there were a bunch of video games, including one that we had on Commodore 64. Was that a Temple of Doom tie-in one?
Oh, so we had the Temple of Doom game, and we also had the Last Crusade game. The Last Crusade game was awesome.
I just remember whipping things.
Yeah, the Temple of Doom game was all right. The Commodore 64 version wasn't as good as the arcade version,
of course. But
the Last Crusade game, that I remember that being a fun game. Yeah. Oh, and don't forget the Indiana Jones stunt show. Didn't we see that at Disneyland?
So there's
in the summer of 1987.
Which I don't know if it's still. I don't think it's. Yeah, I think it might still be going on. So I worked on the show Trading Spaces, the home design reality series, and there was an episode called The Stuntman's Apprentice. And on that episode, it was a stuntman who was in the Water World stunt show at Universal and was also the Indiana Jones in the Indiana Jones stunt show at Disney. And trading spaces with his a younger stuntman that he was kind of taking under his wing. So yes, I at least 2000 8 that was still a thing, the stunt show maybe.
No?
There was also the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland. I can't speak for Disney World, I don't know for sure, but Disneyland, which is a lot of fun. You're in a mine car. Yeah,
That makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
There's boulders, there's everything.
And I left out, I do remember the circumstances under which I saw Kingdom of the
Just
Crystal
real
Skull.
quick,
Yes.
there's an arcade game.
Go for it.
I mean, not an arcade, pinball game.
Oh, yeah.
At least
Indiana
one
Jones
pinball game.
At least. I think there's one for each of the movies.
Probably. Pinball's great.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I love
where
pinball.
did you see Crystal Skull?
Yeah, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So saw Kingdom of the Crystal Skull that Thursday, like the opening night it was in New York, just north of Union Square. There's a Lowe's Theater over there, and I want to say it's at like 19th and 6th. Anyway, we went to see it. It was like a 10 o'clock showing, and it was the same night as I guess it would be the first Slice Out Hunger, or it was
Okay.
like the launch of Scott's Pizza Tours.
Okay.
So yes, if those are not familiar, our brother Scott is the owner and proprietor of Scott's Pizza Tours in New York City. So it was after that, and and there was a lot of family there, a lot of cousins and, friends, people from Cranford. And I remember we were all going to the movie. Yes, the Fjord of Crane. Yes. So, and
Is that Josiah Crane's fjord? Go on.
the one he passed out right over it.
Bummer.
So those suits, man. And I guess I'm sure it's 2008, so I think I could probably tell this story. So, and I won't name names, but I went on a little walk with two of our cousins, one of whom had a marijuana cigarette.
A jazz cigarette.
And a jazz cigarette, yes. And of course, it was like, I remember it was windy and it was really tough for us to keep this going, but we were very committed. In hindsight, wished there had been more, but so we did our thing and proceeded to go into the theater where everyone was sitting, and one of I guess our friend Scott's friends that we all know. Definitely, and but like our uncles there, Uncle Gary was there, sitting there, and I mean, and I guess at the time, it was a little awkward, but this one person kind of called out and goes, "Oh, it smells like pot," and like as we are walking in to the row,
Okay.
and it's just like, oh, shut up. Unfortunately it wore off way too early into the movie, and I remember you describing last week how everyone came in really excited and then everyone walked out very disappointed.
It was a real Phantom Menace situation.
It was indeed, although one person who I remember really enjoying Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Scott.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Dude loves Indiana Jones and aliens. I guess it's really his jam.
That's true, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I saw it at an opening night at the Vista Theater in Los Angeles in the Los Feliz neighborhood. And that is a theater where, especially opening weekend, the owner of the theater or manager, I don't know for sure, but he always dresses up as like the main character or something from whatever movie. So he's dressed as Indiana Jones there. I remember seeing my roommate at the time, Holly, and she was wearing like an Indiana Jones hat, and man, everyone was so bummed leaving that theater. It was
Childhoods were ruined. Childhoods were ruined.
Childhoods were ruined. So Dan, we're an hour and 20 minutes into this episode.
Yeah.
So
should we cut to the chase?
Well, I guess this would be this question would count as what would you have done instead of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, or what would you do next? So Dan,
I guess we should note that that the fifth Indiana Jones movie is scheduled for release in July of 2021, with Shia LaBeouf not coming back, but Harrison Ford returning to the role,
and it is.
I can only imagine. Yep.
Yeah, and it is not a reboot.
Right. No, it is. That was actually clarified, I think, today. Yeah. I saw this news. It is a continuation. This is a sequel. So we
Kathleen
are going to
Kennedy confirms not a reboot.
So we're going to be in 1970, 1971. All right. So you asked, John. What?
Is there going to be an Easy Rider crossover? Are we going to see Wyatt and Billy?
I hadn't thought of that. No.
Go on. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Indiana Jones ends up meeting this young single mother with this a young child that she had with Peter Fonda.
Yeah.
So here's my idea, and I was thinking of different ideas and different ways to go with characters, and I'm like, I think Abner Ravenwood, Marcus Brody, and Henry Jones and Oxman were all together. Oxley, or maybe not Oxley, but I think the three of them were all archaeologists together. So I was thinking it would be fun to see finally get to know Abner Ravenwood a little bit, but that's not my idea. My idea is this, because clearly Indiana Jones is getting on in years, and not that Harrison Ford can't handle it, but I'm trying to think of a reasonable setup. It's entirely plausible that in all these years of occasionally teaching archaeology, he may have inspired some students. So what if a student comes to him and is like, hey, remember this thing that you always talked about? And it was rumor, some type of artifact or something that Indiana Jones had always wanted to, always just was missing that one piece to the puzzle of how to get it. And this former student comes and is like, I think I got it. And now, because each of the Indiana Jones movies ends up taking Indy to a different continent, it usually focuses on one continent, Temple of Doom being Asia, Crystal Skull being South America, or Raiders being Africa. Mm-hmm. So what a great opportunity. And imagine, so you've got Indiana Jones. He's old. He's seeing America as it is in the late 60s, early 70s. And why not have him go to Australia?
Okay.
Why not have why Aboriginal lore and myth and artifacts? We don't really have adventure movies that explore that. They're always going, whether it's to the Amazon or down the Nile.
I haven't seen it, but I feel like it'd be a good opportunity to bring up Quigley Down Under,
which is a Western.
Is it a Western?
Starring Tom Selleck, who was
supposed to be Indiana Jones.
Possibly going to be Indiana Jones.
Right.
Yeah. No, I had to do Magnum PI. So I don't know, maybe it's, this student is of, Aboriginal ancestry, and you could kind of take Indiana Jones not only to Australia, but you could have him have to go Tasmania, the islands, but have Indiana Jones with this student, and maybe this student kind of picks up the
hat,
picks up the hat, picks up the, metaphorically. I really don't think that, but you could almost build a new franchise. And especially, look, you've got Disney owns Lucasfilm. So Disney is going to be making this, and Disney is all about promoting. I feel like Disney has been a lot more focused on diversity in casting, promoting strong female protagonists. So how about a strong female protagonist of, Aboriginal descent, who says like, hey, I was back home and I, was doing this and found this, and I think this could be the missing piece to whatever it is you're looking for. Do the research, fill in the blanks.
Yeah, and then it's set in Australia. You get yourself a Hemsworth. You got it made.
Well, and perhaps while Indiana Jones is adventuring as he's on his quest, he encounters perhaps a young Mick Dundee.
I knew that Dundee was coming into this.
And young Einstein. Well, we're throwing Australia. Einstein. How did we see young Einstein and think, yeah, of course, Einstein's Australian? What?
Well, I mean, Indiana Jones just needs to find some bubbles for his beer. So who else is he going to go to? The guy who makes the parakeet dance. I don't know. Okay. All right. So you're going with the protege, not blood related.
No, because it's the opportunity, not to mention that you're moving forward in time, so it's more plausible you're going to have more women in the field of archaeology. Not to mention it's this era of civil rights, equal rights. So it's a great opportunity to kind of transfer this role, this type of role, to a young woman of color.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Why not?
I dig it.
Yeah. I don't know. What are you thinking, John?
Well, I mean, it's something that you actually touched upon a little bit, but I would love to see like a series of movies about a younger Abner Ravenwood, perhaps with Marion's mother. Maybe the two of them are adventuring archaeologists. I think that it'd be a good opportunity to see a completely different era that we don't really see a lot. The turn of the 20th century. So, yeah, I think that could be really cool. Maybe one of them could involve him finding the amulet that is featured in Raiders. Clearly, he'd be played by Oscar Isaac. I'm just saying that's what's happening.
Would be Abner Ravenwood?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Who would you have? Henry Jones Sr.?
Yeah, because the two of them were colleagues, right? I'm trying to remember exactly.
The two of them and Brody.
And Brody, right. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to have them involved. I don't know.
Who would be your Marcus Brody? Your younger Marcus Brody?
Well, assuming that they would be around the same age. I mean, I think that French Fry Phil said it earlier, Sam Rockwell.
As Brody?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, look, Sam Rockwell can do anything. So,
yeah.
Like, if you said Sam Rockwell as Marion Ravenwood, I'd be like, yeah, why not?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So, all right, yeah, Sam Rockwell as a young Brody. Abner, you really, I guess the only basis you have to go on is someone who could believably have fathered Karen Allen.
Yeah.
And then for Henry Jones, like a James McAvoy.
Yeah, I don't know what younger Scottish actors we have right now.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, good question.
Yeah, I just don't know. But
no.
Yeah, I'd like to see some of those adventures in a completely different era. I think that it's always good when you go back to a time when, technology is almost non-existent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. or well, rather the technology of the time is very rudimentary. So it's like the technology of the time was the telephone.
Right.
Which I guess, oh, how times have changed.
Oh, how times indeed have changed. So yeah, I mean, that's what I've got. Nothing groundbreaking. If you, our listeners, have any ideas yourselves, please email us ruinedchildhoodspod@gmail.com. Send us a voice memo. That would be great. We would absolutely love that.
And let us know. We know, Indiana Jones, these movies are, they're a part of our cultural landscape. And if you're of our generation, it's definitely, or almost definitely something from your upbringing. So if you have experiences, if you have any stories you'd care to share, you know where to find us.
Yeah, if an old historical reenactor has passed out in your general vicinity, let us know. I also want to put a call out there for anyone listening. In a few weeks, we're going to have an episode where we're recording actually in person and with our brother Scott, and we will be talking about the Pee Wee Herman universe. So I'm giving some advance notice on this one. If you have anything, please let us know. Email us, send us a voice recording. We'd love to hear if you have anything. So this is giving you plenty of time to figure that one out. And I think that now's a good opportunity to talk about our next episode. And I'm going to go for this one, Dan. Is that okay?
Go for it, John.
We talked about this one as being a possibility a few weeks ago. Didn't mention what it was. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yes, a Steven Spielberg production.
Right.
Yes. So 1988, one of the most groundbreaking movies of the 80s.
For sure. Absolutely. Fondly remembered by most. Wow, this is a long episode, Dan. We got to wrap it up.
Well, John, it's Indiana Jones, okay?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Dan, pleasure as always.
Likewise, John. I look forward to this every week. And until next time, good journey.
Good journey, my friend.
This is the story of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. You can read along with me in your book. You will know it is time to turn the page when you hear the bullwhip crack like this. Let's begin now. Adventurer Indiana Jones normally didn't wear a tuxedo, but the Chinese gangster Lao Che had chosen a fancy Shanghai nightclub for their meeting. Lao's girlfriend, Willie Scott, eyed Jones with